We have energy for The Witcher.
But with punching up.
All right, well, without further ado, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Kanika Lifestyle Podcast, a video game podcast today as part of our lifestyle choices. And I am joined once again, as always, by my lovely co-host, Nika. Good afternoon, Nika.
Wow. Thanks, Kenny.
No worries.
It's a lovely introduction. And also, I thought you were going to say baseball for some reason.
Well, that is our other podcast, in case you are unawares as you listen to this, as I'm sure many of you are. Me and my lovely co-host here, we also host a baseball podcast together, which you can catch usually twice per week during the regular season and, every so often during the off season when there's enough stuff to talk about.
Nice plug-in.
But we are gearing up for spring training in about a month. So in the meantime, we're talking video games today because, well, last month during the Video Game Awards, we saw a surprise trailer for a new Witcher game. I think the sentiment on the interwebs before the Video Game Awards was that we were not going to see a Witcher trailer yet, that it was too early. So the fact that we saw something, and something that was mostly just a cinematic video, no gameplay or anything, but something that actually had a lot of revealing points in it, mainly being that we were going to now be taking over as Ciri, Geralt and Yennefer's basically daughter in the main books that the Witcher games are based off of, but the main kind of MacGuffin, I guess, if you will, in The Witcher 3, which was the previous game that released in 2015. And teaser, we are going to do a 10th anniversary Witcher podcast at some point, but that is not this podcast. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
But we're here today to talk all about The Witcher 4, and I guess we're going to start with just kind of giving our background here with the Witcher franchise, right? So first of all, I think, Nika, you are born in Poland, which I think is important to note here because these novels are from a Polish author and invoke a lot of, I would say, Polish fairy tale, correct? Or folklore?
Not just Polish folklore, but mostly the Slavic region folklore, Germanic.
Eastern Europe?
Central Europe. Yes.
Central Europe. Okay. My bad. My geography's a little off over there because of the whole Russia being Eastern Europe thing.
It's a lot of Central Europe fairy tale, and there's an intercrossing of different countries and fables that, people move around. They brought their stories with them. So
yeah, there's even vampires in Transylvania kind of lore maybe interwoven in here a little bit. No Count Dracula yet in the main story, but we'll see. Maybe something in the new games will leave some room. There's you can't fit everything into one, although The Witcher 3 tried, I think. There's a lot of fun
monsters. It's all about monster hunting, bringing forth the lore of monsters that were part of the European culture.
So with that, we both were first, I think, introduced to The Witcher in 2015 when The Witcher 3 video game came out for PlayStation 4. And you were the one that was clued in on this game. And you had said, like, I want to pre-order this game. And I remember I wanted to tell this story. I vividly remember this day in my head because this game came out in May of 2015, and I had gotten home from work. It was still light out, and the phone rang, and it was GameStop, which was literally 2 blocks away walking from our old Chicago address. And they said, oh, PlayStation decided to put this game up for download already. Like, they released it early, basically, online, and as such, you can now come into the store and pick up your copy. And I was like, whoa, we weren't supposed to get this till tomorrow. We can get it today? That's awesome. So
was that just a day earlier, or was it?
It was literally just a day early, but it was like such a surprise, and like we had nothing really doing, and it was like probably nice out. It was May. I don't know. It was walkable. Okay. And we walked over there and we picked up the game and came home and popped it in, and like we entered this huge, vast world for the first time, and I think this was the first game that you just truly loved, right?
Yes, because I liked the story-driven narrative of the game.
Yes, this game
RPG,
has
first
one of the
person.
best stories, and not only the main game, but the expansions both tell pretty cool stories as well. I think you could argue the first expansion, Hearts of Stone, it's called, was maybe a little lackluster, but it was still pretty beefy compared to a lot of games. It was still well thought out and had a. But the second expansion, Blood and Wine, was even more interesting. It invoked a lot of vampire lore, and I think that
Different
was really
setting.
interesting.
It was different setting too. It was
That's yeah.
because it went south instead of north, where you go to cold
Yeah.
areas. It went south to the warm areas.
It got orangish. It got more sunny outside. The color became more vibrant of the world, and it was yet still the same world. So it was fun to see, and that's a good thing to talk about because we now know from the new game and the new trailer that we're gonna go see some new locations from the Witcher franchise that we didn't get to see in Witcher 3. But more on that in a second. I want to make sure we covered everything, and we didn't. I think one of the most important things to say here is after we played this game, and it's huge. Like I said, we're going to do a separate podcast about it, but it's huge. It has a lot of notes that you can pick up and read, about the world, and there's tons of world building in here, and it all comes from the novels that we mentioned, the Polish novels, written by Andrzej Sapkowski. Am I saying that technically,
Yeah,
phonetically?
you're doing fine. Andrzej
Great.
Sapkowski, yes.
There you go. I love that authenticity.
Yes, I wasn't aware of these books either. I started reading them after I played the game.
Mm-hmm.
This was a actual cultural phenomena in Europe. It wasn't just here. The books, they tried to make a show back in the days in the 90s, and it was a flop, whatever. But the game itself and
The novels.
the game itself started this new cultural phenomena about The Witcher, because the books existed way, way, way before the game existed. And
100%.
because the people got engaged in the game so much, it brought a lot of fans into the realm of books, so they could get the supplemental information.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the story of the books, but I think it's worth pointing out that there are a lot of really eerie similarities between the Witcher novels and the Game of Thrones novels. The biggest difference being that the Witcher novels are finished and
Yes.
done and published, and I want to kind of bring the video games back into this really quickly because there are 5 main novels and 2 prequel novels that kind of make up the complete Witcher story, and there's now 2 more additional novels that are considered prequel novels, so there's 9 books total that exist. But the main saga is these 5 novels that are about Geralt, Yennefer, and their adopted daughter Cirilla, who is born of elder blood, elven. She has elven blood in her and elder blood, and she's special because she has this blood in her, like Jon Snow and like other characters in Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, you name it. Ciri is that character in this saga, and yet we kind of see the character through the eyes of Geralt, mostly through the books, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the series was introduced a lot later in the books. The concept of The Witcher, it starts with Geralt.
I guess I'm talking about the point of view when we get Ciri's story in the books. I'm not a book reader yet. I keep trying to be, but I get stuck.
That's okay.
But I haven't gotten to the main saga ever and tried to read it. But does the main saga get told through Geralt's point of view still?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's all I was trying to explain is the book is always kind of told through Geralt's perspective. It's called The Witcher. So that's where we get to the new trailer, I guess. Is that a good spot to go with this? So one more thing. Before we get into this new trailer, then we're going to talk about just the history of the games, because there is a Witcher 1 and 2 video game that were released for PC before The Witcher 3 was released kind of on console for the first time. And this was a big change because it opened up the player base to a lot more people. And also, it was a big upgrade in scale, scope, graphics for CD Projekt Red, who's like an independent Polish video game company. So it's kind of fascinating to me that they own this Polish property. It's really nice, actually. You know, like it kind of feels like it's something that has real, true authenticity from the people that make it. And I really feel like it comes out in the product. It's made with love, as clunky as it is sometimes, because the Witcher 3 video game is dated in some aspects with regards to the way that it plays. It is 10 years old now. However, it still has charm and appeal and a beautiful narrative story that is hard to replicate in games today because it requires hard work and good writing.
But it's definitely writing.
Hard work too, come on.
Well, sure, but it starts with the writing.
I think it's fair to say that The Witcher 3 left a long-lasting appeal on both of us as a video game, and it continues to do so today. And the other CD Projekt Red game to come out in the last 10 years, Cyberpunk 2077, which takes place in a crazy dystopian cyber tech future instead of a medieval setting like The Witcher.
Well, that game is also based on the books.
Correct, it is. But these two games have a lot in common in terms of like they both involve player choice. They both involve very similar skill trees and like ways you upgrade your character over time, and like the ability to innovate and create a build based on your particular playing style. There's a lot of individuality and uniqueness. If you want to play up close and personal, you can. If you want to play from a distance, you can. And there's different ways to go about doing that, and that's part of the fun and creativity of this game, or these games, I should say. I think I've given a proper introduction to kind of the world and the setting. The only thing I would add is that these are open world game adventures where it's kind of like you're free to wander off where you want, and that can have good or bad consequences sometimes. But having said that, it's part of the enjoyment of the experience too. And so without further ado, we got a trailer for the next Witcher game at the Video Game Awards, and we got our first look at our new Witcher. We're no longer going to be playing as Geralt. We are taking over this new, what's being called a new Witcher trilogy, as Ciri. We are going to play as the adoptive daughter, and if you played The Witcher 3, spoiler alert, Nika, Ciri kind of becomes a Witcher at the end, right? If depending on which ending you get, because there are multiple endings to this game.
There were 3 endings, sure, but I think one always stood out more because she has been groomed from the childhood to become a Witcher.
Correct. And there's some interesting caveats about that, because previously in the novels and in the canon and everything, it's been established that Witchers are boys, that girls, the only ones that ever underwent this mutation to fight monsters, required you to take strong drugs, basically, to change your body. And the females that did this died previously, and they a lot of the boys died as well. There wasn't a guaranteed success rate.
Sure, it's a trial, you know.
It's a trial
survives.
it's called the Trial of the Grasses, and I'm bringing it up now because we're going to be talking about this a lot again later. But I guess we can talk about it now because it came out right away in this trailer. It didn't come out right away, but as this trailer came on, we knew pretty right away it was The Witcher, right? You could just see the setting. It was like right out of the first game in Velen, dark, gloomy, medieval European style village, and a lone gunslinger walks into town, right? That's kind of how this trailer starts. The village people are basically offering up a girl to some monster in the area to basically as an offering, sort of
A sacrificial
offering, yeah.
It's basically many medieval towns used to do that. Something comes out of the forest. Here, have a virgin to satisfy your whatevers, and then we're gonna have a peace for a year.
Well, science, everybody, from the 12th century.
Yeah, exactly.
So we get this lone gunslinger marching into town. Yeah, what were you laughing about?
Science. Imagine having that kind of mentality now. Science.
Oh, yeah. I know. Exactly. Okay, so Siri walks in, and then we get to reveal that it's Siri. She
Yes.
is the lone gunslinger now walking into town, and this is our first look at Siri. She's now 15 years older, and you made a comment when it was on that she looks like a Polish woman.
She does. She looks very Slavic. And that's a good thing. I mean, she is part of that region, so why wouldn't she look like that? She looks mature. She has grown up, and now it's her story.
So she wanders into town and she decides to go after the girl.
No,
And
she's going after the monster, not the
the
girl.
sacrificial offering, though, she stops the girl from
Oh, yeah.
going in there, and then goes on to take on the monster herself. This monster is called a Bach, Bauk, and it's a particular type of monster who will prey on your fears. And we're going to talk about more of this later. But this was definitely a new monster that was not in the previous game. And I didn't play The Witcher 1 and 2 on PC, so I don't think it was in there either. It was basically marketed as a new monster. And so, yeah, we get this line at the end of the trailer that Ciri basically is being told by this monster that you cannot escape your fate. And we see her transform with the cat eyes and take some potions or some mutagens. Is that what they're called?
Mutagens, yes.
She takes some mutagens and she transforms her abilities, much like a traditional male Witcher would after undergoing the trials. And we'll get into more of this in a minute, but it was confirmed since the trailer came out that Cirilla has undergone the trial of the grasses before this game begins. So she would be now the first true female Witcher. And I think that opens up a lot of exciting possibilities for this game and for this future with her royal lineage and bloodline. It was exciting to see the game. The game looks beautiful graphically, and it's just exciting to know that we're going to get another game like The Witcher 3 again. It's exciting.
And they also said that the size of the game is gonna be pretty much the same, or it will stay similar to The Witcher 3.
Right, which is enough to keep you satiated for a long time if you know this game.
Yeah.
So what were your first reactions to seeing the trailer during the Video Game Awards? I know it's been a month or so, but what do you remember how you felt at the time?
I was surprised to see it because I wasn't expecting it. That was something that's very unexpected. It was a nice surprise for sure. I'm glad that they put it out. It was not a gameplay. It was more of a cinematic universe trailer. It just brings you back to the Witcher world, the Witcher lore and all that stuff. So they nailed that aspect. As far as everything else, it's all hypothetical, what it is, how it's going to play out and everything else that comes with the new game.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like the thing that stood out to me the most was basically that we are going to play as Ciri now. It's her game now. We got to control her a little bit in the third game, but only for story purposes, and it was very short-lived all the time. Literally like 5 to 10 minutes and you're out. But the tease and the potential of what was there, I think offers a lot to play with. It was just, to me, that and the graphics stood out. Wow, we are continuing to progress in the world of graphics as good as they look and feel to us. And the one thing about the Witcher 3 game was that the cinematics blended seamlessly with the actual game. They were acted out in the same graphics as the gameplay. And if that's going to continue here, holy crap, these are going to be some surrealistic graphics.
They switched to using the Unreal Engine
Correct.
5 or whatever it's.
I think that's a huge move, by the way, on the part of CD Projekt Red. If you know anything about this company, you'll know two things: that their games are very ambitious and very well thought out, and also at times poorly executed on the back end, particularly if you're running older hardware with some of the newest game. At the time, I'm of course talking about the Cyberpunk launch, though I don't want to let The Witcher 3 get a pass here because you, quite famously in our household, had a very sad bug the first time you ever played the game where you got stuck underwater 10 hours after your game started.
I know.
And had to restart the whole thing.
I was devastated at that time.
Yeah. And you had, because there was no autosave or anything that was there from before that moment.
I had to restart the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, you did eventually get that fixed, and you got through the game, obviously, plus its expansions. And, you know, if anyone has never played The Witcher 3, there's never been a better time, as it has a PS5 next-gen update. So you can get all the benefits of next-gen in the game now, including, like, fast menu loading and stuff. So it's really good. Okay, well, after the trailer came out, of course, there was a bunch of media frenzy and interviews and a little bit more information drops here. And I just went to the IGN article here. It was written by Matt Perslov, maybe? I don't know. This is from December 12th, by the way. So we're about a month exactly away from when this came out. And it was also updated last on December 13th. So all this information was a month old, but it's still pertinent now because we haven't really gotten any other information since. But yeah, I wanted to start with just a little follow-up on what they confirmed from this first trailer, which was basically that the location is an isolated village in the north. We mentioned, of course, that it looks like a traditional kind of traditional European village, not a town. There are towns in the game, but this is not one of them. It's just more a couple homesteads, farmland, maybe a blacksmith, some tinkering, some noise going on, some roosters, that kind of stuff. This is an isolated village in the north, and it is also a quote-unquote side mission. These are of course, there's like Witcher contracts in the game. So like you will find notice boards with like offerings of coin to come into town and dispel of certain monsters in the area. That's part of how you make money in the game and buy new clothes, swords, upgrades, outfits, everything you need to survive. So yeah, this is giving you all the traditional vibes. They confirm that this creature is called a Bok, and that it's according to the gaming director Sebastian Kalemba. That's his name. This monster is a tricky bastard and will play with your own fears. Those are two quotes about the Bok creature that we see in the trailer. It has a really like beaky, hooked nose and crony. Looks like a sort of a witch-ish type figure to me. At least from the first game too, when those witches transform out of the painting. You know, they're beautiful in the painting, but they look nasty. Hideous when they transform into their true selves. That was basically all the information we got about this trailer. And again, it was quick. It's over. It's done. And that's it. That's all the trailer news we got. But it is exciting to see The Witcher back again. Yes, Nika?
It's fun to see it back.
And this is just the beginning. We got a whole now campaign that's going to come out with information drops. And this is certainly not going to be our only Witcher podcast over the next until it comes out and as it comes out.
Well, we're gonna try to follow the progress of the game development, I guess.
Well, we got a few more info drops from this IGN article I want to get through, and the first one is that Gwent is returning. Everybody, Nika, do you want to tell everyone what Gwent is, since you were the first Gwent expert in this house? I have since become a Gwent expert as well. I can get through all the Gwent matches in the game now. But what is Gwent?
That's a card game. It's a card game that is part of
strategic card game.
It is strategic card game where you have to collect certain decks, and then you have to play other players in the game, and you receive cards if you win the match. There are tournaments. There are 4 main decks, and there are, I think, 2 additional with the expansions, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's a strategic card game that's really fun.
And you play your decks against other players' decks, basically, in one deck at a time. And
one deck at a time.
As you collect other cards throughout the game, your deck gets stronger and stronger, and you can take on the better players that exist. And you get the idea. It's a whole side quest plot in of itself, but it is a fun game.
It is a fun game, and it's a game that translates really well when you play against the computer. Because we did buy a deck of cards. It's not the same to play against another human.
Yeah, because there's certain tricks that you have to play. I guess the one thing I would say is, like, if you are going to play human to human, you need to maybe shake it up from the way you play the computer and beat them, and kind of maybe try to go off what's expected, like your normal strategy. if you will.
It's definitely a different strategy if you're playing against another person.
For sure. But I was excited to see that Gwent is going to return, and we'll have to see if Ciri's a swaggy player or not. A savvy player, I should say. But in the meantime...
They're going to introduce probably different decks to collect, too.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how, similar those decks compare to the Witcher 3 decks, or if there's going to be an evolution to the game in some way.
Potentially.
But I hope that the strategies evolve. I hope that we don't have like the same strategy, like collect the iCards, try to get as many spy cards as possible.
I think it's going to be very similar.
You do?
Oh, absolutely. They're not going to change the game rules.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to change the rules, but will there be any evolutions to the rules, or will the new decks function in some new way like the monster decks do, where it's like you play one card and it will play 3 cards or 4 cards at a time? Or...
I think you might see more of a different deck and different style that you need to play with a different deck, but I don't think the rules of the game going to change at all.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's going to stay. Base game stays the same.
Yeah.
Maybe some new bells and whistles and caveats added to the game to make it more interesting.
Sure.
Maybe the computer will play you differently because they all kind of play you the same. All right. Well, Gwent is back. That's awesome. Another thing that's going to be back is romance options. This is a interesting subject considering that we have Ciri this time instead of Geralt. Geralt was always romancing the witches, if you'll go based on the previous games, right? Ciri, on the other hand, was a little bit more experimental, shall we say, in the books and in the games.
She was going through some teenage experimental stuff, so yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're the heir to the most important throne in the world. Yeah, there's going to be some acting out, some rebellion there and whatnot, but it'll be interesting. I kind of want to bring this into the next part of the conversation. If you know anything about the third game, the choices that you make during the game kind of impact how Ciri's story ends. And there's been some talk that they want to try and like tell this new story in a way that canonizes all of those endings to possibly be true. We'll have to wait and see how that all plays out.
I think the best way to approach this is if you played Cyberpunk 2077, look at that game through Witcher lens. They're going to bring the elements that worked in that game into The Witcher 4. It's something they've been talking about it because the Cyberpunk 2077, it is a very successful game, even though it had a shaky start. But at the end, it got to the point where it is a very successful game and it provides people with a lot of options and it's fun.
100%. The one thing I want to mention here is our guy right now, Neon Knight on YouTube. We recently started following him when this trailer came out, and I gotta say, he is probably one of the most definitive Witcher lore masters I've come across yet on YouTube, and very thorough. But one thing he mentioned is that there is sort of a way, and you mentioned Cyberpunk, so I want to talk about what he mentioned on his channel in his most recent Witcher video, which is basically that you could use the 3 endings for Ciri's story in the first game, which is basically that she dies, quote unquote, she becomes the Empress, or she becomes a Witcher. Those were like the 3 endings, and you can kind of use all 3 in a way that Cyberpunk starts, where they give you the option to start the game 3 different ways that eventually all meet up on one point, so that you're playing the same game. I could definitely see this happening as a way to make all of the choices that you made in the first game still canon. So even if Ciri did die, quote unquote, because there is apparently a shot at the end of the death ending where it hints that she might still possibly be alive, because you see the dove, the white dove or whatever, that was her symbol. The swallow, is that her symbol?
Yes.
Okay, so I think I covered everything there, but big shout out to Neon Knight. What do you think? Do you think that that's a possibility that Witcher 4 could keep all 3 endings canon, but also start Witcher 4 like Cyberpunk starts, where you have 3 different entry points into the main game?
It's a potential, sure. If they want to go that route, I don't see why it should be a hindrance. It's a nice way to start the game.
I think you just like the Ciri ending as a Witcher ending best, and it feels like the right ending to the game.
It does, but I don't want to discount the other endings as well. So if that's the way they want to start the Witcher 4, that's fine. I have no issue with that.
I don't either. Only that I would say I feel like a lot of the Witcher 3 story is about the choices you make as Geralt, letting Ciri choose for herself what she wants. That's how you get the best ending, right?
Right.
Or the quote unquote the Witcher ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's going to be a big part of the new game, right? Is like, I guess if you got the bad ending and they want to canonize that ending for you, does that mean in the new game that people are going to continue making choices for Ciri, like as you play her, or are you going to start to choose for your own? Exactly. I think you'll still be able to choose whatever you want at some point.
Yeah, I think this is more, if you did play the previous games, you might have some dialogue somewhere mentioning something back, throwback to the old games.
Totally. They did do some stuff like that before, and that's what CD Projekt Red does. They're very thorough, if anything. All right, well, I got really nothing else left to talk about from the IGN article that was like mind-blowing, but I wanted to get to Neon Knight again because I think we're going to end this podcast by talking about a few things that have come up on his channel. I want to start with the most recent video first because there's just a couple of short little nuggets that I think we can power through before we get back to his previous video, which involves a pretty big theory that I like for the Witcher 4 game. So, all right, on his most recent video, you should check it out. He gets into quite a bit of information here, and one is that there is a intent there's an intent right now by CD Projekt Red to keep these meaty side quests that they have in the game. And if you've played the Cyberpunk 2077 or The Witcher 3, you'll know that like every story and plot point in the game that you come across, side quest, side mission, or main story quest, is very well thought out, has a lot of good acting involved in it, and just feels like not filler material. It feels like it's meant to be there. And we appreciate that as a gamers because we get the other side of it too. And it leaves a very hollow experience, I think, in the end, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the things we've really loved about that. And we hope that they continue to do this as they make this new trilogy and more Cyberpunk games, obviously, in the future as well. So keep it up, I guess. And then there's the idea of that you mentioned it earlier, but the world size here is going to be roughly the same as the world map in The Witcher 3, and that makes me really excited because there's a lot to get through in The Witcher 3, you know, and just to know that there's going to be something new like that around the corner to go through is exciting, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us. There is also something I wanted to point out that Sebastian, this game director, Sebastian Kalemba, he made a post a couple of years back that Neon Knight brought up about a medallion that was posted. And the medallion was posted when the game kind of went into production for the first time, and he teased at the time that we would get to see the other side of this medallion in the future. Well, after the trailer premiered, another post came out with the other side of this medallion finally on it. And for those that haven't seen it, the first side of the medallion has more of a picture on it, but the back side has actual runic text on it. And this text was translated, and it was translated to say, "Days and nights pass, and the blood remains the same." A very interesting message as we head into the next part of this podcast, which is to basically get into Neon Knight's theory from the previous video, Nika.
Okay.
I think a lot is unknown when it comes to Ciri, other than the fact that we know she has done the Trial of the Grasses. That's one thing that they did confirm in the IGN article, which means she has undergone the transformation into a Witcher. You know, she can get the cat eyes, she can take the mutagens and the potions and fight the monsters. She's not relying on just her royal bloodline abilities that are different than the Witcher magic abilities, if you will. Neon Knight has a theory about Ciri that she is trying to escape the fate that has been bestowed upon her bloodline and possibly her daughter and children after that, you know, that there's a lot of interesting prophecies about her bloodline, and it don't necessarily end with her. It could involve her future children, right? And there's this idea that maybe she doesn't want to go along with that plan anymore, and that she wants to take more control of matters. And one thing that everybody knows, that knows the lore of The Witcher, is that when you go through the trial of the grasses, you become sterilized, and you're no longer able to have children or reproduce. And Neon, who is the lore master of all things Witcher that I can find out there, is basically speculating here that Ciri is making the choice to go through the trial of the grasses to knowingly purge herself of the ability to have children, to despicably defy this prophecy that has been made about her and her bloodline. And as you might have guessed, that's a really dark tone to bestow upon somebody's character choice, right? But it was interesting to me as someone that has an interest in this character. What are your thoughts on all this, Nika? You read the books. You have an interesting perspective on all this, I feel like. But do you think that that's going to be a basis for her character in this game?
I think she has to have some kind of a purpose that drives her to do what she does or becomes the person she becomes, whether that's the Witcher that we see her in the trailer. And I believe there's going to be a lot more to it. She needs some kind of a driving force behind her decision making. And her destiny seems like ripe for picking for a plot story. So I have no issue with it. That's a good plot, and it can be exploited. I don't want to speculate because we don't know which directions they're gonna go. But the destiny in the Witcher 3 games does play a huge role. So to continue with that storyline makes sense, and then also adds a lot more depth to Ciri's character.
Yeah, I agree. I think, during this video, he gets into a lot of the backstory about the trial of the grasses and how it's killed girls in the past, and not even all the boys that do it survive, and it's a horrendous undergoing. And like even the Witchers in the game that talk about it even have painful memories of it.
Well, it's kind of interesting to see because in the game, the Witcher 3 game, the trial of the grasses, the dungeon where this is happening is destroyed. There's no more mutagens or potions or whatever they use to make the trial, to reopen the trial, I guess. So having Ciri goes through that trial, it will require some kind of rebuilding of it.
Rediscovery of the method.
Maybe, but we also know that she can teleport to different timelines and be part of different worlds. So she might transform to The Witcher in a completely different environment.
Yeah, no doubt. You bring up some really interesting, exciting ideas for me when it comes to the future of the game. But before we get to that, I just want to put a bow on kind of this conversation and just say, if that does ultimately wind up being Ciri's motivation for taking the trial of the grasses, is to like purge herself of the ability to even have children, I just want to kind of bring it back to this interesting trailer that we got, because we see this creature at the end, the Bok, who says your fate cannot be changed, and that according to the game director, that is someone that is preying upon your greatest fear. And that's a fascinating line in this context of like, you might be trying to not have children, Ciri, but you're gonna be surprised. Things come to you in this world in ways that you don't expect, right? And especially in The Witcher, the whole basis with Geralt and Ciri coming together in the first place is the law of surprise. I just thought it was an interesting way to kind of bring this back to the trailer and to the reveal of this new saga, and that perhaps there's more to meets the eye with this whole trailer and what's being communicated to the audience and about the story and the direction that they're going with this character who's so beloved.
Yeah, but I think that the monster that you're talking about, it's probably you have to face your own fears. So whatever fears that she has, she will have to face that before she can even...
Right. Oh, Ciri's always not really been a fan of her fate, if you will.
Yeah.
and she's kind of defiant about it. So we'll have to wait and see how that manifests in the official game and in the story. But for now, we're just speculating and watching and enjoying the ride and the build up and the lead up to this game. And yeah, I think, you know, I think that's pretty much everything I got for this episode, Nika. What about you? Like, you got anything you want to add about your expectations or anything for this game when it comes to even the books included that like we're missing from the games but might be a part of this?
Well, the game is taking place past the books. So.
Right. No, that's what I mean. Like, there's information though in the books that could possibly come into play in this story, right? Like
Sure.
everything in the games was built on and based off of the books. It was expanded upon on, and maybe people can disagree about the choices, but
a lot of the games, especially 1 and 2, were based on the short stories from the Witcher books, where Ciri was part of the other 3 books later, and the books and the game starts. Am I right? That's the kind of
books,
timeline?
the series story ends, and then the Witcher 1 and 2 games come out, and then Witcher 3 happens with the reintroduction of Ciri.
Okay, so
How does the books end with her? Does it end with her leaving? Like, and then does it make sense in the Witcher 3 she's reappeared?
the books end more on 3 of them going into the sunset to live happily ever after, like a fairy tale. So sure, she can come back a little older and pissed off about something. Why not?
Yeah.
Create some drama and she comes back, whatever.
But even The Witcher 3 happens after that sunset walk. So all the stuff with the Wild Hunt and The Witcher 3 and Series 24 in that game. So it's all happened after the novels and the walking off together.
Well,
in
that
the
makes no
sunset.
sense, though. That really doesn't make sense. Because when she leaves
That's why I say they are different entities. I want to make
Yes.
that clear to people. You know, like CD Projekt Red got the property and they just kind of took it off with it and ran with it.
Right, because the timeline is a little confusing when it comes to the books and the game as a whole. And we're not here to debate that at all. The game just draws
From that lore.
characters from that lore, and that's what's more important. Because,
Correct. But having said that, I think there are probably things in the books that can give us clues as to what's going to happen to Ciri in these games and or what direction you could possibly go. And one thing I guess I wanted to say I want to end on a fun note and be
Okay.
like, you know, you mentioned Ciri can transport and teleport and through time and space. One of the things that you can do with her in combat in The Witcher 3 is you can like teleport across the battlefield and like, you know, fight 3 guys at once, so to speak. And it's really fun and intuitive. And these are very different though from your actual Geralt Witcher abilities. And knowing now that Ciri's going to be able to tap into some of that, do you think that there's going to be that's the evolution that they're going with, is to kind of combine the Lara Dorn bloodline abilities of teleporting and transporting through time with the Witcher abilities themselves? Or do you think that going through the Trial of the Grasses is going to purge her of these like teleportation abilities and she might have to like rediscover them somehow as part of the...
I think she's gonna lose something in the Trial of the Grasses.
Yeah.
She's gonna lose something, and
Nothing comes for free.
right, it's gonna basically trigger her to be the Witcher. And I think she's gonna either start a new school or be a part of a school of lynx, because the medallion that she is wearing in that trailer is of a lynx, not a wolf. It's a lynx.
Interesting.
So she's gonna start or be part of the new school, or she brings old school back. I don't know.
Yeah, there is the Lynx medallion. We didn't talk about that, and we can talk about that again in the future, but there are medallions to represent the different schools of the Witchers, and we didn't have Lynx in the previous game. We had some like Lynx statues around in some underground temples or cheetah looking things. I don't know. I always thought they were look like
Well, I thought they were like lions and stuff.
Yeah, it's tough to tell, you know, like it could be a female lion, definitely not a male, not the mane.
No, there was no mane.
So it had to be female, like cat, or
Well, there was a school of a cat.
there is a school of the cat. There's also looks like a school of the lynx. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this intertwines.
Yeah.
But we'll be here following it, everybody. So I don't know. Nika, you got anything else to add before we put a bow on this episode?
I think we covered the topics that we were set out to do.
Sounds good.
I'm sure we'll be back on this. One thing I would point out that this game is not going to come out next year. It's most likely 2026 or even 2027. They're not going to rush this game.
For sure. Yeah, there's a long pathway ahead, long road to the time this game will come out. And we will get many more trailers, looks at gameplay, and a ton of media interviews and notes. And we will be here to cover it all for you guys when there's enough to talk about,
Yeah.
I think. And then we're going to be probably around those major milestone moments, those trailers at E3 or whatever I know they don't do that anymore, but the trailers at the big events throughout the year, that's when we're going to get new looks at these games. In the meantime, let the speculation begin and keep going.
Well, we are here for the speculations. That's what we are here for.
Could probably babble about it for hours, but I promised you we'd keep this short and concise. So having said that, I hope you enjoy this little Witcher chat. And again, stay tuned for our 10th anniversary Witcher 3, which we're going to get into much more of just that game as a whole and why it has such a long-lasting appeal worldwide.
Well, you're calling it a classic nowadays, so.
Teaser. It is a classic. 100%. All right. In the meantime, enjoy the playoffs, everybody. The NFL playoffs, if you're watching. We're going to get back on that right now.
Buffalo is winning against Denver Broncos. Right?
Tatanka.
Yep.
All right. Adios, everybody. Talk to you
Bye.
soon.